Welcome back to another episode of 40 Facts About the 40K Universe. I am your host Gershwan and you are watching One Mind Syndicate. Today we continue with more viewer requests as we get into the Imperial Guard regiments that you guys asked for. Let's get into 40 facts about the Steel Legion. The Armageddon Steel Legions are the regiments of the Imperial Guard that fight as mechanized infantry alongside Chimera armored personal carriers in defense of the strategically located Imperial Hive World, Armageddon, and its surrounding star systems. Armageddon is an Imperial Hive World located about 10,000 light-years to the galactic northeast of Terra in the Segmentum Solar and was the site of several of the greatest conflicts ever fought by the Imperium of Man, including the Second and Third War of Armageddon, against the massive orc wall of warlord Godskull Thraka. While there are some Imperial Guard formations that rely upon horses or such other conventional steeds, the Steel Legions of Armageddon ride into battle as mounted infantry within the hulls of their trusted Chimera armored transports. The high numbers of Chimeras amongst the Steel Legion regiments is due to the highly industrialized nature of their homeworld. Armageddon is one of the foremost manufacturing planets of Chimeras, and produce vast numbers of these vehicles for use across the Imperium of Man. So great is Armageddon's output of Chimeras that an extremely high proportion of regiments raised from that world are mechanized infantry. These highly mobile forces are skilled at rapidly redeploying convoys of vehicles to engage the enemy. Often the Steel Legion's vehicles simply overrun the enemy's front lines, allowing the infantry to dismount and sweep the area clear of any aggressors. The citizens of Armageddon are no strangers to brutal warfare. Their world has suffered greatly during the 41st millennium at the hands of invaders throughout no less than 3 devastating wars launched by the enemies of humanity. The Steel Legion played a major role in all of them. Few records exist of the events known as the First War for Armageddon, as much of it has been utterly purged by the agents of the Inquisition. Fragments that remain describe a world gripped by a massive demonic incursion. The foul demons of chaos were defeated only at the great cost by heroes such as the Great Wolf Logan Grimnar of the Space Wolves chapter and his valiant Space Marines. Some whisper that the world and many surrounding systems were purged in the aftermath of this invasion, and that the feared demon hunters of the Chamber Militant of the Inquisition's Ordo Malleus, the Grey Knights, were somehow involved. Warboss Godskull Mag-Uruk Thraka, quite possibly one of the most charismatic and dangerous orc warlords in the galaxy, led a massive wall of orcs to invade Armageddon, starting the Second War for Armageddon in the 941st year of the 41st millennium. Warp storms prevented Imperial reinforcements from reaching the embattled world, forcing Armageddon's defenders to fight alone against the Greenskin onslaught. Making things exceptionally worse for the defenders was the incredibly dangerous, incompetent display by the planet's Imperial commander, Overlord Strab. The war was costly, causing enormous casualties amongst the planet's population, and it was only due to the heroic efforts of legendary Commissar Yarrick at Hive Hades that the forces of Armageddon were able to hold the line. Fortunately, other valiant Imperial forces were eventually able to make planetfall and support Commissar Yarrick and the Steel Legion. Space Marines from the Blood Angels, Salamanders, and Ultramarines chapter threw back the Orcs in several engagements, and the Titans of the Lego Metallica fought bitterly with Orc Gargants across Armageddon's surface. In the end, the warp disruption blocking access to Armageddon abated, and fresh reinforcement arrived to help secure the planet's war zones. Warboss Godskull left Armageddon to gather his strength and plan a new invasion, vowing revenge against Commissar Yarrick and the Steel Legion. More than 50 standard years after the Second War of Armageddon, Godskull Mag-Uruk Thraka launched a new onslaught against the planet. This time, Godskull had made allegiances with other notable orcs, such as the fierce Nazdrag Ug Ujgrug and the diabolical clever Mechboy Orchimedes. An enormous orc fleet soon arrived in the Armageddon sector, smashing into the heroic but hideously outnumbered warships comprising the Imperial Navy's battle fleet Armageddon. While the orc fleet arrived in the Armageddon system, Commissar Yarrick had taken command of the Imperial forces on Armageddon, and hastily organized a plan to prepare for the coming invasion. The Imperium was not without its defenders. Titan Legion, Space Marines, and the Sisters of Battles reinforced Armageddon's existing defense alongside the forces of the Steel Legion. Orc rock smashed into Armageddon's surface and disgorged massive hordes of greenskins. Meanwhile, alien forces and heavy equipment, including many Orc Gargants and other massive war machines, arrived directly on the planet via the Orc teleporter technology. After the initial assault, the Third War for Armageddon bogged down into a large number of individual clashes between the Orcs and the Imperium. Frustrated by the growing stalemate of the war, Godschool left the planet to seek other, greater battles, leaving his lieutenants to continue the fight against the Steel Legion. Battle still raged upon the surface of Armageddon between both sides, with no end in sight. On the Spinward front, Lord Marshal Ganzeric has deployed Armageddon Steel Legion regiments into only a handful of war zones. These regiments have mustered at the world of Cyclopea to assist with the tithe preparation there, to muster new Imperial forces, and from there they were sent to the Departamental Minitorum Depot on Ganth Magna to assist with operations against the Pharaoh-Orc tribes plaguing the world. The Armageddon Steel Legion regiments operating on Gath Magna recently received an unexpected benefit due to a bureaucratic error somewhere in the Byzantine organization of the Departamental Minitorum. A large number of Death Strike missile launchers were mistakenly routed to the Steel Legion mustering around this area. The guardsmen from Armageddon have embraced this addition to their nominal strength and are relishing the opportunity to use such devastating weapons. The Hive World of Armageddon, like most of its ilk, consisted of huge ash wastes shocked with toxic pollutants and corrosion chemicals. Some regions of the planet consist of jungles and oceans, but the pervasive effect of industrial pollution are inescapable outside of the world's great hive cities. Teeming with humanity, Armageddon's hives are not simply manufacturing centers. They are also packed with the crowded workers and overseers necessary to keep the massive industrial complex running. These conditions give rise to a seemingly endless series of savage gang wars that erupt regularly amongst the underclass of Armageddon. Many recruits into the Steel Legions are taken directly from the veterans of these brutal struggles for dominance of the Underhive, as only the fiercest and most savage gangers manage to survive and even thrive upon the carnage. The gangs of Armageddon are sometimes conscripted en masse into the Steel Legion, and it is said that most of these gangs require little to no additional training to be effective soldiers. In fact, some squads that were former gangs excel at inventing and cunning small unit tactics on the battlefield. The Steel Legion is sometimes supported by the conscript platoons of the Planetary Defense Force troops and rattling sniper teams. The guardsmen of the Steel Legion wear uniforms that include a mustard yellow-green coat, gas masks to protect themselves from Armageddon's toxic environment, and rounded helmets over black infantry fatigue. The guardsmen of the Steel Legion, in addition to their lasguns, make use of grenade launchers and missile launchers as heavy weapons. Their regiments are supported not only by chimeras, but also by Lehman Russ Executioner main battle tanks. The troopers of the Armageddon Steel Legion are particularly skilled in the art of deploying mechanized infantry, and have a special expertise at battling orcs. In addition, guardsmen from Armageddon make fine assault troops for fighting in urban and hive city environments, as well as heavy industrial zones, chemical slums, and other such toxic regions. Their equipment and expertise with such horrible environments make them invaluable for trudging through all sorts of polluted or otherwise noxious wastelands, from underhives filled with the toxic residue of ancient atomic generators to ruin-filled swamps with hallucinogenic flora, quicksand, and nearly invisible pockets of lethal gas. Of all the Steel Legionnaires, Major Pius Koren is an officer who became one of the most famous tank aces of the Third War of Armageddon. He is also known as the Hero of Anthrand. Koren and his crew single-handedly destroyed an entire armored column of orc vehicles during the Battle of Anthrand. Koren directed his crew from the top hatch of the main turret of the famed Shadow Sword Super Heavy main battle tank known as the Iron Saint. A notable Steel Legion regiment is the Armageddon 808th. They are known for its aggressive and hard-charging officers, whose leadership style has earned the regiment a considerable reputation for trying unusual and often quite risky maneuvers to approach the enemy by surprise or at a great speed. This regiment first attracted attention during the Imperial Crusade into the Spinward Front, when it became engaged in a bitter and violent battle against a group of orcs on the world of Ganth Magna. Despite the primitive weapons and equipment of the local orc mobs, they won several victories over the 808th through surprisingly cunning uses of terrain, stranding the regiment's transport vehicles in a series of narrow passes, and overwhelming the Imperial soldiers with their characteristic brutality. The 808th recovered from their losses and proved more successful in later engagements, swearing to avenge themselves upon the Greenskins by seeing every orc expunged from Ganth Magnum, only to be redeployed shortly thereafter, their tempers still unquenched in the black blood of the orcs. The 808th recently saw action in a bizarre engagement on the planet of Sisk. Originally meant as a training exercise, a Steel Legion convoy of chimeras was on patrol in the outer fringes of the northern continent when they encountered a band of rogue psychers and mutants led by a hulking figure in spiked power armor. The battle that followed was nightmarish. Dramatic seismic upheavals rendered many of the chimeras useless, and the Steel Legion was forced to dismount. The Armageddon troopers fought through the enemy's psychic projections, crossing trenches of live fire, and endured assaults by warp slime. The mutants and the warband's commander inflicted several casualties on the Steel Legion, but the regiment's ability to withstand toxic environments enabled them to survive the onslaught and press on to claim a victory. Few other guardsmen could have accomplished such a feat, and the banner of the 808th received a blessing from the Sisk's Ecclesiarchy High Cleric in honor of their bravery. Another regiment is the 276th. The 276th Steel Legion Regiment fought in the ash wastes of Armageddon, where the 3rd Company discovered the remains of a shattered orc gargant left over from the Second War from Armageddon. They secured it with the help of the regiment's 4th Company in the face of heavy orc counterattacks from the orc tribes that had remained on Armageddon after the conclusion of the Second War. And those were 40 facts about the Steel Legion. There's more stories to come. We might come back to this awesome regiment. Between this and the Death Corps of Krieg, which one's your favorite? Personally, I like the background of the Steel Legion because they fight the orcs, and that's pretty badass. But the look of the Death Corps of Krieg is way better. Like, they just look more badass. But comment down below, let me know which one you guys like the most, and don't forget to suggest other regiments for next week. Please comment down below, put suggestion followed by the regiment that you guys want to hear about. Thank you guys so much for giving us your suggestions from before. What we're doing is we're tallying everything up, so we're dividing by the comments or by the regiment, and we're just tallying which regiment gets the most number of likes and how many comments there are for that regiment. So that's what we're doing with your suggestions. They're not just like going nowhere. Again, thank you guys so much for liking, commenting, and sharing. If you want to support us, please jump on over to Patreon. A simple $1 is going to let us keep putting out videos every single day. Thank you guys so much for everything, and this was Gershwin with One Mind Syndicate, signing out.